Brenda Murray, and this is Studio 56. And today I'm going to be chatting with Sebastian Thommen, an Irish artist and urban sketcher. And we're going to be looking at examples of his gorgeous art. If you're new to Studio 56, you should know that in addition to hosting free interviews and free demos with artists, and you can watch all of those interviews and demos on our Studio 56 for Creatives YouTube channel. We also produce online workshops for artists, and we organize vacation workshops for artists in gorgeous locations. And we have some wonderful workshops coming up with tickets still available in Edinburgh, Paris, the French Alps, Brittany, and Malta this year. So if you want to find out more information, go to our website, www.studio56boutique.com, and click on the pull-down menu called Travel Workshops. Sebastian Thommen has been painting in watercolor since his early teens, a hobby that he kept close to his heart, not wanting to taint it with the added pressure of having to make a living from it. Yeah. And you pursued a career in theater and you were a film actor. But in recent years, you took up painting professionally. And 2023, you were awarded the Silver Award and the Artist's Choice Award in the Art and the Open International Plein Air Festival in Wexford. So let's bring Sebastian into the call.
Hello, how are
Sebastian,
you?
I'm good. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
My
You have your
pleasure.
coat on. Is it cold
It's
there?
very cold here. It is, and there's a storm outside as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you see things rocking around a bit, it's because there's probably a little tornado coming
Oh,
in.
really?
There's tornadoes in Ireland now for some reason.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
are you under
new.
a tornado watch?
No, it's that they're only mini tornadoes.
Okay.
Yeah, but apparently now because of social media, everyone's seen one and posting it, whereas 10 years ago, they weren't really heard of in Ireland.
Right. Yes, it's snowing here as well, but that's Canada and it is January, so anyway, let's chat about your art. So you have been making art, you've been doing you sort of discovered sketchbooks, the actual sketchbook, and before that you were doing working just on sheets or
Yeah, I was just using watercolors, and then I just so happened to have run out of paper when I was outside painting. And I went to get some more and realized, oh, I've only got this sketch pad. So I used my little sketch pad and I recorded it and put it up on Instagram, and people really resonated with it. And I really resonated with it as well because I realized I was having so much fun with it. And I wasn't worried about it having to be framed you know, or to show anyone. It was purely for myself that I was painting in it. So then my love of sketch pads grew, and I realized I could use the project in the sketch pad as a reference picture for a bigger painting, and it was
okay.
leaving out all of the bigger bits and simplifying it. It was, yeah, so that's how I got into sketch pads, maybe around 4 years ago.
Okay. And so are you actually making larger paintings on the sheets from the sketch pads now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Most days I'm in the studio and I can go through my sketch pads and go, oh, I love that one. And just, you've got all the memories from being there on the spot, and that all comes back compared to taking a photo and looking at it. It's like, I barely remember taking that photo. But
Yeah.
with a sketch pad, you've got all of the stuff that was going around you, for the hour that it took to sketch. And, so it's really special.
Yeah, including getting chased by bees. I saw that video.
Yeah, that one was luckily I'd managed to swipe that one away.
Yes. Okay. Good, good. So we're going to look at your art. All right. So Sebastian, tell me about capturing the magic in your sketchbook. What does that mean to you?
Okay, so capturing the magic in the sketchbook is basically being outside or in a car, anywhere where you're seeing the scene in front of you, and you're capturing the magic in front of you and you're putting it all down onto the sketch pad. And then you're releasing the magic later on at the studio on a bigger page. That's my little concept.
I love it. That's great. And so this sketch that we're seeing in front of us, I
This
think
was
I was just going to ask, I think most of the sketches we're seeing today are from Ireland.
Yeah. So this is a little village down the road from me, and I was drawn by the shadows and painting into the sun. It's a little cafe, and I put down the first wash and let it dry. It dried really quickly because it's such a warm morning. So I was able to get the middle values in then straight after. It was quite a quick one because, the sun was coming up so fast and it was moving so fast in front of me. So I got it down fairly quick.
Yeah. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the dry brush technique, which you've used a lot in this sketch.
Yeah, so when you've got more paint on your brush than water, and as long as your page is a rough texture, you can create these lovely dry brush marks, which make for a more dynamic painting. I think Spockfit says that every painting should have a few dry brush marks in it, and it's kind of I think it creates a lovely, dreamy, imaginative, impressionistic look to the painting instead of just all straight lines. They're a lot more interesting with a dry brush.
Hmm. I think like a lot of energy, a lot more energy
Yeah,
than if
exactly.
it's just, a perfect thing. So a couple of questions. Sylvie says, Bonjour du Québec. Hello, Brenda.
Mhm,
Hello, Sylvie.
mhm.
Bonjour. And Jill is asking, do you have a favorite brand and weight of sketchbook?
Yes, well, the one I use at the moment is Arsh, and I'm just used to using it. I do recommend trying other brands, and every now and again I use Baoyong, which is quite a good Chinese brand. This particular one is 300-gram rough, cold pressed, and I work from pads. This one here, I was on my honeymoon in Sorrento, and I was lucky enough to be sitting in this square right in the middle, and there's so much action going around me. And the waiters, they really didn't mind my wife and I just sitting down at the table there for the bones of a good hour and a half, and they'd love to come up and see the progress. You can see here, I just got the first wash down, and I'm just waiting for it to dry there. And it was lovely seeing all the drama around me. This is one of the benefits of painting outside compared to painting in the studio, is you're really there in the scene. It's what life is all about, I think, just being there and taking in all the energy. And that all comes out in the painting, whether you're trying or not. It's just there. It's in your body. It's coming out your fingers onto the page.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I think in Italy, just going back to what you said at the beginning, they Italians seem to be very sympathetic to artists. They'll let you sit there for hours and doing a sketch, and they won't bother you. Other countries, not so much, but Italy
right.
is great for that. Yeah.
Well, that's good
And
to know.
yeah, and William asked, what format is your sketch pad?
My sketch pad is a very wide format, so it's probably only 5 inches in height, and it goes across, it's probably 12 inches in length altogether. And so it's quite a narrow sketch pad. It's great for scenes, long landscape scenes, something like this, you might have to flick it around and have it in a portrait view.
Right. So I have seen that sketch pad. I know it's a long, it's great for landscapes. This sketch we're looking at right now wasn't done in that.
No, no. So this was actually taken from a photograph because it was at night. I was having dinner with my wife, and we had a few cocktails after, and then I was struck by the lovely reflections on the wet ground of this lovely building in Cork City. And I went home and I painted it from that photograph, but it really, really was colorful, and I kind of exaggerated some of the colors and some of them I didn't. And just really played with this one.
Yeah. So in this one in particular, I know that in other sketches I've seen you do, you use a scratching out the paint technique, and I had not
Mhm.
really seen people do that. So I just interviewed someone a couple of weeks ago who did it, and
Mhm.
but I was surprised because you don't see it that often, but I noticed that you've done it fairly often in your sketches. Is that what you've done in this sketch? Scratched out the paint?
Yeah, there's a few scratches there. I like to use as little amount of gouache, of white gouache as possible. And sometimes I seem to be using less and less of it, the kind of more I paint. I kind of think ahead more and leave the whites behind. But it's lovely to scratch out instead of using gouache if you can, because I think too much gouache can be very distracting. But having said that, there is a bit of gouache in here now compared to other paintings that I've done more recently. It's amazing to see how your work evolves as you paint every day.
Yep.
But I used a little bit of gouache there for the reflections. If you look right down in the middle bottom bit of the post, you see there's a little bit of dry brush gouache uh,
Okay.
creating some reflection.
I was wondering if it was like a gel pen or something.
It's a very thin needle point brush that I use quite a lot.
Wow.
It's a neat needlepoint brush, and it's great for those thin lines.
Do you mean, are you talking about a rigger?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking as I looked over your art, I thought he really uses a rigger a lot.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
this one it's like a rigger, but it's got a kind of a bell bulb, kind of that, so it holds more water. You see it a lot in my reels. I'm always using it, and people are going, "What brush is that? What brush is that?" And it's a great little brush. So I hardly ever use my normal rigger.
Okay,
It's
wait.
just that one.
You're saying there's two different kinds of rigger?
Well, this one, I don't know if this one is called a rigger. It looks like a rigger, except it kind of gets bigger as it gets down towards the base near the actual wooden bit of the handle.
Oh,
And it just holds a lot more water. For gouache, it's different because you just, use the gouache straight out of the tube. But if you're doing lines for cables or trees here, I might have used it on the left tree. And it's really, really handy for that kind of thing. This particular painting was done at that Art in the Open festival, and there was 200 artists. You see where those cows are, and just beyond those cows. And I left all the artists and I just walked up into the fields. I just wanted to get high. I wanted to get high so I could see those distant hills in the background. And
okay.
do you know what? It was probably one of my most favorite painting experiences ever. It was like being, that film Gladiator where the barley is blowing in the wind.
Yes.
It was kind of like that. And it was just so peaceful. And I was there for hours and hours. There was only one other artist up beyond me, an oil painter. And it was heaven. It was pure heaven.
Nice. Oh, that's wonderful. And you will always have that memory every time you look at this sketch.
Yes, and I've used this sketch for many reference photos as well. So if I'm doing workshops or whatever, then I'll come back to this and I'll come back to the original photo that I took on that day because there's so much there. You've got all the distant purple hills and the distant rain clouds in the back, and then the foreground, you've got those lovely dark values to really push everything back, and then the warm colors in the front helping with that as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to go back
Mhm.
because to the idea of the rigger because Eileen is asking what is a rigger?
Okay, a rigger is just a very thin brush. So it's a very long, thin brush that's great for doing thin lines like telegraph lines or, birds in the distance. So it's just a very small brush, but it's got very long strands with the idea being that it'll hold the pigment compared to just a very short strand. You'd have to keep going back into the puddle of paint to reapply. But with the rigger, the general idea is that it holds water and paint.
Okay. So, and Eileen is saying that she thinks that she says, I think he is talking about an extended point brush, like a number six with a long, thin point that makes the tip. I don't know.
Mm.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's similar. I think they all come different sizes, and my one I think is an 8. I think but it's yeah, that's pretty much it.
okay? And then Karen says she has one of those brushes. It's a Dynasty Reservoir brush.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to
No,
check
I
that out.
haven't. Me neither. And I'm not really a materials person, but some people really pay attention to these things. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. A couple other things. Diane says it's elongated round. She calls it an
Oh,
elongated round brush. Hi, Diane. Hey, buddy. And okay, a few other questions. Eh, Jackie is asking, what size are these paintings and your pad? Well, you already mentioned the sketchbook was 5 by 12, right?
yes. So in this particular circumstance, because I had so much time, I just went straight into a bigger painting. So this one is about 11 inch by 16 inch. I don't know what everyone's got different metrics. I don't know what that is in centimeter,
Yeah.
but it's quite a large. I think it's like a quarter sheet of watercolor, a watercolor sheet.
Okay. And Pat was also asking what size is the painting, which I'm probably not sure which one she's referring to now, and I apologize, Pat. Um, okay, a few other questions. Oh, okay. Anne is clarifying. Hi, Anne, that an extended point brush is also known as a reservoir brush.
Oh,
So there you go.
wow. So there's Dynasty brush. That's one. I'm writing these down because I'm going to check it out. I love collecting brushes.
Who's learning from who here? I know. That's great. No, it's great. It's good that people are really into these things. Carolyn is asking, she says, I noticed tape around the paper. Do you tape down paper in your sketch pad?
I sometimes, if I have forgotten my clips, but I have those little I don't know what they're called. Are they called buffalo clips? I'm not too sure, but they're
I don't
clips
know.
that hold down the sides of the paper so they don't get blown in the wind.
Okay. And anonymous attendee is asking, do you carry a particular palette, restricted number of
Yes.
pigments? Do you consciously
Yes.
pick the palette for each sketch or do you work intuitively?
I generally have a set of pigments that I use, maybe around 10 pigments at the most, and two of those chop and change.
Okay.
And, for plein air sketch, in my palette, it's it's got those 10 pigments, and then I would have the same pigments then in the studio in my bigger palette, and maybe a few other extra opaques.
Okay. And then Jill is asking, what's your favorite green for the trees? For example, to
Mm,
the right of your field and cow painting. Do I need to go
mm.
back or you remember?
I remember. So I don't have green. Recently I've picked up cobalt turquoise, but most of the time I use cadmium yellow and I use cobalt blue for spring greens, and then cadmium yellow and ultramarine for more emerald greens. And so you see those trees on the left, they're cadmium and ultramarine. And then the warmer green, the spring green there, that's more cadmium yellow and cobalt with a little bit of yellow ochre as well, just to warm it up.
Okay, I hope you guys listening are all writing all this down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Barbara's asking, how do you approach such a vast landscape like this one? I think she's referring to.
Well, I break it down by starting out in the distance, looking out in the distance. So that means that instead of covering the whole page really quickly, I can just cover the top bit, maybe the sky, and I'll just focus in on that and a little bit of the background fields. And that way I have time to put wet into wet without it drying really, really quickly and being worried that I'm missing a little bit of wet into wet in other places. So I just break it down. So you see the sky and the hills in the background. That was done maybe in the first 10, 15 minutes. And then I worked down for towards the middle of the painting. That was another 10, 15 minutes, just really enjoying just putting in some details, some softer details. And I kind of, with this one, it's a particular composition. It's quite similar to a Z composition. You see there's almost a Z line, and it's pleasing for the eye to see those kinds of compositions because your eye just kind of bounces around, and then the two trees either side help frame it and balance it and give a bit of depth.
Yeah. A great job on the clouds. They're very believable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this one.
So this one it was more of a study of simplifying things, and I just wanted to get most of the painting middle value done in one big shape because the less amounts of shapes, the more pleasing it is, I think, um, to the viewer, and it's more enjoyable almost to paint as well. So you can see that the first wash dip is the sky and that building on the right where the sun is hitting it. and then I let that dry. And then I just put in that one shape. I worked from the left and worked across to the middle of the painting. And then I got that big sweeping shadow down in front of the shop front, and then worked my way up. And then while it was wet, I just dropped in some thicker pigment to get those lovely soft edged, wet into wet um, effects.
So I think I'm really loving how that white building and how with very few strokes um,
Yes.
our eye is forced to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Do you know what? Coming from an acting background and
Yes.
studying and writing a little bit, and it's it's a big thing I got from that was if you tell too much, it's almost insulting for the audience. And the audience likes to have their imagination, as you say, fill in the blanks. And it's the same with painting. Less is more. But this is a particular style. It's just, what I like. And not every painting I do is like that. This is just an example. It's good to mess around. Like the previous painting, there was lots of detail, but sometimes it's nice just to break it down into just a few amount of shapes as possible, and it makes for an interesting painting for the viewer because their imagination just goes wild.
Yeah, I think I love that. I think that's really great. And
Mm,
it's amazing. I always find it amazing how your eye does fill in the blanks. You
yeah,
don't have to stop and think about it. You just know.
no, yeah,
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 very cool, very cool. Yeah, it's show don't tell in acting, right?
yeah,
And
exactly, yeah,
yeah, and that can be translated to art. You don't have to tell every single detail.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
cool. All right, here you are, king of dry brush again. Yes.
So
And
this one, let's go for it.
I was just going to say, maybe I'm going to have to ask you to talk about your tree technique as well at some
Mhm.
point.
Of course, of course. So this one is a plein air painting again. So nice in a summer's day, just to walk up into the hills and be struck by something, and you may not know why you're struck by it, but you're just in awe of its beauty. And maybe from painting lots, you develop an artist's eye and go, oh, this will make a nice composition. I'll put the house up on the top left, the two-third of the rule of thirds, and then I'll put a few lines pointing to the house, like that hedgerow that's sweeping up to the left towards the house, and those distant hills in the background pointing to the house. And then put in just have fun with it and splash paint and get that foreground in. And it was, again, this is just all bringing back memories from being on the spot. If I was painting in the studio, it would have been a different story,
Yeah,
painting from a photograph. And so
yeah,
those trees, they are what I do with trees, normally I get them down in the second wash. So rarely I put any kind of trees in the first wash. So I get all the first wash down, and then those trees, then I mix up two or three different kinds of greens in my palette, and I vary them just to make it more interesting so that it's not all one big blob of the same color. So that tree on the right, the sun is hitting it on the right. And so it's got a lovely warm green, and then it's got a cooler green on the left of it where it's more in shadow. And then I spray and with my spray bottle and do a little bit of splashing. That's where it all kind of gets fun again. It brings you back as a kid where you're just splashing paint around that's what it's all about,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. Well, you seem to have an awful lot of joy, Sebastian,
Yeah.
for what you're doing, which is wonderful. It's refreshing and really lovely.
No, thank you. It is
Yeah.
lovely.
So William is asking, William, who I know, who's traveled with me, he was in Oxford and he's a retired architect. And he's
Mm.
asking, how much pencil sketching do you do? It looks like very quick outlines and not a lot of detail with the pencil. So
Mm.
I'm just giving you the background of William because I know what he's thinking.
Mm. Yes. So I veered away from sketching too much, from doing some workshops, with some masters, I suppose, and seeing how they work and seeing what I like and take what I want from that. And so I realized that too much of a rigid drawing it almost inhibits you from being free with the painting of it because you're almost trying to keep in the lines. So you want to do most of the drawing with the brush because then it's freer and it's more spontaneous. So you have those marks down with the pencil just to remind you of where those shapes are. Okay, there's a bit of a tree there. I'll just give a squiggle for that. That'll remind me that there's a tree there. And the build maybe in the point of focus, you might go into a little bit more of a detail, but as it spreads out from that, then less drawing. But sometimes it's nice just to sit down and draw as well. I get that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Huh, cool. Interesting. I was, as you're talking, I'm thinking how much I love to draw. And
Yeah.
and some people not so much. They'd rather just splash the paint around.
No,
Um,
totally. Like the one of the recent paintings I did this week was of a pier, and there's a tractor on the pier, and there was a boat on it, and a boat below it in the water, and I spent a lot of the time drawing, and it was lovely. So it's great drawing as well. It's good to experiment with different things and to mix things up. I do believe that.
yeah, yeah. And this one, it doesn't look, well, it looks like it might have had a tiny bit of drawing on it.
Yeah, yeah. So. And this one again was done in the art in the open, a plein air painting, and there was this lovely gallery across the road, and I just loved the little umbrella in front of it, sunshade, and I loved the action of the waiters coming in and around, and the cyclists speeding past. So there was lots of action and lots of color in this as well, and yeah, it was fun to do this one.
I'm wondering if your background as an actor has impacted your art in the sense that you have like an appreciation for action and drama. So,
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Only on stage or in painting. At home, it's a different story. I don't appreciate it at all. I'm just like quiet, like, thank you very much. But I can get all that drama out in the painting now.
yes,
And, acting's the hobby. Now, I haven't got rid of, my agent contacts me every now and again, unless it's something really, really interesting that's worth sacrificing being away from the family. Painting is just the best, because you get to be around your family so much. And I have some children, so it's nice to be around them. And so there is drama, I suppose. And this particular one was just a little walk away from my studio where I am now. And again, I just wanted to keep it all to simple shapes. So those cars, you look at them and you think, what are those things? But you can just about make out that they're cars, and that's enough, I think, without going into mad detail. And then that building in the background as it goes across again, it's just all one shape.
yeah.
And the only bit of detail then was the point of focus, which is the boat, which you kind of rest the eye on eventually after you bounce around going, oh, filling in the blanks. Nice.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes the best way to have drama in your sketch is with a strong light dark contrast. At least,
Yes.
let me say it the other way around. If you have values that are similar throughout your whole painting, then your eye kind of goes, "Ah," "Ah."
Yeah.
But if
I
you've
think
got
you're
that,
right.
yeah, if you've got that strong light dark contrast, but also to paint like as you did in the last one, a moving something moving like somebody on a bicycle. That's also
Yeah,
helpful to have some drama in your sketch.
exactly. Yeah.
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 Lovely. Now, did you use the dry brush technique to get that sparkle in your water?
Yes. So you have to be really quick and use the side of a brush. I might have even just used the mop brush, which is what I used to get most of the sea. And then as I got closer to the beach, I had less pigment on my brush and I just swiped it across really fast. And that created those little sparkles, which means that I don't have to put them in with a bit of gouache. If you can get away without using gouache, like I said, then that's good. I think the only bit of gouache I used was to sign my name on this one.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that the technique of dry brush to get that sparkle on the page really
Mm.
probably wouldn't work so well on a hot press paper, would it?
No, it would be too smooth. Now you could still get away with it, but you would have to have very little, I suppose, water in your pigment, and you could still get away with it. But it is easier with rough paper.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to click back because
Mhm.
our friend Perry is asking if you scratched the rope wire on the sailboat in
No,
this.
you see the way it kind of looks like dry brush. You know, with a scratch would be one continuous line, whereas this one was with a bit of gouache, and it just to create that kind of it's supposed to dynamic kind of a little bit of movement in it,
Right.
and I just swiped it down, and a bit on the mast as well, a bit of gouache there, but the rest of the boat is white paper or first wash.
Okay. Is there anything more you want to say about this one?
No, no, this is a plein air done out in the art in the open again. Um, it was yeah, quite a lovely day. There was a looming cloud. You see there, he was coming into rain. Oh, there is one other interesting thing. I didn't notice until the end, but you see that line going down the left of the page. It
Yes.
goes down, yeah. So that was from rubbing out a line with I didn't have a putty rubber, so I couldn't roll it out with my putty rubber, which wouldn't damage the paper, but it created that effect, which it didn't take away from the painting. I still sold it. It was one of my bigger sales actually, interestingly enough. But it kind of works for some reason. I don't know why. Sometimes it reminds me of an alien spaceship coming down to suck up that person on the beach.
So Jim is asking, is your usual paper rough?
Yes, my usual paper is rough. It's 300 gram cold pressed paper. So the warm pressed paper is actually smoother paper. And 300 gram cold is what I use.
Okay, thank you. And
Mhm.
Gil is asking, do you consciously decide where the white highlights are going to be, or does it just happen subconsciously?
At the start of the painting, I look to see where I want to leave white. And then at the end, if I think it needs it, then I'll put in a little bit more with gouache, but only a little bit, only a little bit.
Okay, this
Mm.
looks like you've used the scratching out technique and gouache.
Yes. So this earned me the silver prize in the plein air festival, Art in the Open, and I was quite surprised because I was showing people which one to pick, and this one, I did a value study first in my sketch pad just to break down the shape, and it's actually that landscape I did with the distant hills and the cows. This is where the cows were, so I was standing in some mud and the smell of cow poo all around me. It's all coming back to me now looking at it. And it was just a little sketch I did first, and then I painted it. It probably took around 45 minutes, but it really resonated with people. And I was really kind of, wasn't sure about it, but people really resonated with it. And it's amazing how you might not particularly think something is good, but I've grown to love it so much now. It's when you take yourself away from a painting and go back to it. It's called down at the trough. So you see, that's basically I left the white of the sky. I left that white, and I just put in a white, sorry, a light wash in first, and then I went in when that's dry with a bigger, stronger value, starting from the left, and I worked my way across. So those trees on the left are blended into the tree in the middle, which goes to the tree in the right, and there's all movement and kind of pointing down to the harder lined edges of the trough where you have your lightest of lights and your darkest of darks kind of right next to each other with a bit of color, a little bit of lavender.
Yeah,
And that's it's got everything. It's got splashing, it's got scratches, it's got spraying, it's got dry brush, it's got all
yeah,
of the amazing things that watercolor has.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I never use scratching, but then
Mm.
on the other hand, I actually don't do a lot of landscapes now that I think
Mm.
about it. So
Yeah,
would you can do you are you doing mostly landscapes?
I do. I'm just drawn towards landscapes because I grew out in the countryside on the farm, and I've just got such great memories standing beside rivers, fishing all day, and just being around nature. But having said that, I think as an artist, you start to look at things as shapes. So you could be looking at a pile of rubbish bins and go, "Oh, look at that! Look at those reflections! Look at those shapes!" And they're all varied and interesting. So it could be like this particular one was the reflection of the sky on that puddle beside the feeding trough. And I just liked the shapes of it more than anything. And
Yeah.
that could apply to an urban scene as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a question from Michaela, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure if she said the previous one, so I'm not sure if it's this one or
Mhm.
this one. The
Mhm.
question is, those lighter areas that look kind of waterfall-y, how did you create these? Was it water running down a colored area in the previous one? So I'm not sure. It must be
It
this
could
one.
be the next one. Yeah, I think it's that one, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it could apply to it anyway. That if you have thick paint and splash on water, then and if it's at an angle, at a steep enough angle, the painting will almost paint itself with those lovely natural looking, um, I suppose, marks that you see here on the bottom right, for example. That was just all just, I poured sprayed water into my hand and just splashed it onto the page. And
Ah,
it created these effects that are very organic looking and not man-made.
yeah. Okay, well, good eye, Michaela, because I
Mm.
actually didn't even notice that part.
Mhm.
So wonderful. Okay, here we go. A city scene in the rain. I
Mm.
think you Irishmen must be experts on rain paintings.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And reflections.
Yeah.
So this one was, that one that I showed you at the start with I'm looking into the sun. I literally just turned my page to the right, or turned my easel to the right, and this was the view there. Well, it was a different day, but I liked painting in this particular spot because there was an awning coming out the side of the pub. So if it did rain, which it did, I was sheltered. So it was ideal. And I painted this again with the first wash, which was the sky in the background and the foreground, very, very light bit there. That was all done in the first wash. And then when that was dry, it took ages to dry because I didn't have a hairdryer uh, because I'm outside. I put in the middle value then, and I used my rigger to put in those lines on the left, and they're kind of sweeping over, and they're creating a little bit of drama. And the umbrellas are great again, just because they give nice little different shapes, same as that signpost in the back. You see, there's a round signpost, and the variation of shapes, it just makes for a more interesting painting. It's like food for the imagination, all of those little shapes.
Yeah. And I think the star of this painting, if I may say,
Mm.
is this shape right here.
Yeah. Again, it's all one wash, all one shape, and
Yeah.
there's very little detail.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Where are we here?
Wow, this one is in Wexford Town, again in that festival. So you go to a different spot every day, and this one, I was I was right in the center in the square, and I was just drawn towards the statue, and I put in a few vague lines of the statue, and then just worked my way down, and then gave the impression of shapes. And I wanted to stagger the buildings a little bit because if it's all one line, then it's not as interesting. So I used a little bit of artistic license to change the shapes around just to make for more of an interesting composition. But again, you see the round pub sign on the right. It's just a round circle. All of these little things, they all those different varied shapes, they all help to make a more interesting painting.
Right. So, question here from Jim. He's asking, do you revisit places
Yes,
re-sketch to help with fleshing out your studio works?
I do, but when I visit them, it tends to be a different day, different season, and it's always very, very different, which is great. So you're not, it mixes it all the time. But I'm unlike an oil, I have a very good oil painter friend who would just go to the same scene over the course of a week at the same time every day to to finish his painting, which is great for oils. But I think with watercolors, because they're so fast, you have to use them so quickly that you can't really do that.
Yeah, yeah. So question from Patricia.
Mhm.
For your first wash, do you wet both sides of the paper?
No,
I haven't heard of that.
I don't. I think it's good to do that if you're working on a very, very, for example, soft scene or a foggy scene, and you want the paper to stay wet for as long as possible so that you can work on all those soft edges. So you would dampen the back of it, maybe either spray it or with a big hake brush or a mop brush, you would wet all the paper and then put it on your board and then wet the other side of it. And that way you've just got a lot more time. And if you're painting somewhere hot, it's very beneficial to do that. But most of the time in Ireland, you don't need to do that. It's just wetting it on one side, your front side is enough to get all those soft marks that you want to get in.
You just wave your paper around in the air and it's damp enough.
Yeah, exactly. Or sneezing it.
All right. And so this one has a lot of work with the dry brush technique, all of them.
Yeah. And so I went through a phase and I am still at that phase. It comes to me every now and again, painting tall ships. And tall ships are great because there's loads of dry brush in it. And also there's that bigger hull shape. So you've got all your soft, there's not so many in this one, but your soft shapes inside the hull. So you're kind of using everything. This particular one was a plein air painting. It was the first day of the week-long festival, and I was so nervous and I was first on the scene because I had my camper van and I slept left to those people there, and I got up in the morning and I got a spot, and then this big bus came with with so many people in it, and they all came out and they were like, "Oh, you got the best spot," and I was like, "Oh my God, it's a competition." I didn't know art was a competition really, and but so I was a bit nervous painting it, but then I got into it when I just had a few artists say, "Oh, that's very good." So sometimes just that gives you a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a positive approval. It gives you a little boost.
I think our viewers are I think that they're probably thinking, wow, I can relate to this guy and how you're sharing feelings as well, not just techniques, which is
Mm,
really helpful. So
mm,
this photo, I had to look at it a
mm.
couple of times, and I was thinking, why did he include this photo?
Do you know
But you have
what?
to look at it, and then you have to look at the next one. There we go.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure why I gave you that, but maybe it was to give you a bit of sense of that scene. Again, that's in Sorrento. So the very first picture I showed you was the first wash of that painting. Remember, I said I was in Sorrento in the market square, and all of
Right.
this action was going around. So you see, the first wash is the very, very light blues and yellow ochre on the top, and I worked out, and that all dried, and then I just played with the bigger shape and got all the movement of people in, and lots of very varied colors, and towards the end of it, I must have had two shots of limoncello, which possibly helps with the painting as well.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ah,
landscapes. This is what I've seen a lot of your landscapes from your
mm.
Instagram account, and people can
Yeah.
look you up. Your Instagram name is,
Sebastian Thommen.
there you go, Thommen.
That's it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of landscapes there and videos showing you making the landscapes, and those videos are
Yeah.
very really fun, really charming.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
particular one is in Ireland, and I just loved that scene. I pulled in my camper van, and it's a very small camper van, and so, but it's great because it's got an awning, so if it does rain, I'm okay. Now it wouldn't be okay in this weather with all the wind, but if it's just rain I have to worry about, then it's fine. And I didn't have any paper this time round, but I had my sketch pad, and sometimes I just go out with my sketch pad, and it's enough just to explore the shapes and the colors, and splash some paint around. And yeah, that was quite a fun piece. Again, it's all coming back to me now from just looking at it. It's quite nice, and I think people were drawn towards the private properties. There's a little bit of clickbait there. What is he up to?
Yeah.
So they have to explore it a little bit more.
Well, you are on this side of the fence, so
Exactly. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
not being that daring, not
no
that much of a
laws
rebel.
were broken. Yeah.
No.
Oh my
No, this
goodness.
is the day I got attacked by that bee.
It's
Um,
amazing how you can see this picture and you remember the bee.
yeah. I remember the Guinness beside me as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
This particular one was with my family camping with some friends, and in the camper van park, and I went for a stroll. And again, I'm just a sucker for green fields and clouds, and so I painted that down. Actually, that's my most viral video on Instagram. This one is nearly 250,000 or over views. People really resonated with it. I don't know if, particularly why, um, but it's I think maybe it was just the video. There's a little bit of a story behind painting it, and I'm showing all the different effects that I use, from scratching. And I actually had my two hands free. I didn't have to hold my camera in my left hand as I filmed it. And so my friend was filming, so I was able to use both hands and scratch and paint and really just get into it and get my hands dirty, and spray onto the page and splash paint on my brush and fight off bees and then have a sip of Guinness. It was a great day.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So it's interesting how you have these stories that come back to you
Yeah,
um, because of the sketch. And
yeah,
I mean, when you're sitting in one location for several hours
yeah.
to do a sketch, 1 hour or 2 hours, often things just happen, right? Like,
They do. Yeah. And lots of people come up to you as well and go, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I was out last week, and someone said, "Oh, I want you to paint my house and this house next to it, but leave that one out because we don't like those neighbors." There's always characters that you meet.
oh, that's funny. So this is the earlier sketch that we saw,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
that's
showing
it.
your setup in your studio.
Yes, no, this was just I just set up at our friend's house, which was near. You see, I did initially did the sketch there on the sketch pad, and then I had that as reference. So I went back home to the house and just set up on the table, and friends are just sitting. We're having a few glasses of bubbly prosecco, and it was quite lovely, just using the sketch as a reference photo and not using the photo as a reference, because then you're not looking at all of the details that oh, should I leave that? You're just looking at the sketch that you did, and
Right.
then so you're capturing the magic in the sketch pad, and then you're releasing it onto your page, and you're still as free and you're loose because you've warmed up in that day. And it's great, and I love it. And that particular palette there, I get so many people asking me about that brass palette that was gifted to me on my 40th birthday last year. And my wife gave that to me, and it's actually brass. It doesn't actually, it's always dirty, but that's okay. But it's a great little addition, and hopefully it'll last a very, very long time.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. And we saw this one. So does this mean
Yeah.
we're back to the beginning? No, I guess it was in there two times.
No, yeah. Well, there's just a picture of me painting that scene.
Yeah, that's the scene. So, it seems like most of your sketches are landscapes of Ireland. So you must be, just really love your country and
Yeah, well, this is in London, this particular one. It's in Richmond in London, and of course, I don't paint the what's behind me, all the rows of houses. I'm just like, oh wow, look at that shape, look at that shape of that river and how it's turning around. So I'm at a viewing point in Richmond. So there's lots of people around early in the morning. It was the day after a wedding. I remember being quite hungover, and I put this one down. Just because I really wanted to get something down while I was over in England. We were only there for a few days, and this was done on a page, not a sketch pad, and it's probably a little bit bigger than an 8 by 10 inch. And I was just drawn towards the river and the hills in the background, and then the trees and the bushes and a few gates there or fences that you see on the bottom right. So just all those simple shapes, and it keeps things free and fun.
yeah. So, about how long does it take you to do a sketch,
And
Sebastian?
so this one took about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
Mm.
Hmm. Cool. And how about this one?
So this one, again, it's that village from a different angle again, and it comes from a sketch that I did in a sketch pad, and then I went back and did a bigger version. It's quite a large. I think it's a half sheet. This one, so it's quite a large painting, and I I loved the white of that building on the right, and so straight away I thought, well, that's going to be the point of focus. So I'll put in all the kind of action there, and then I'll put in my red awning, and then I'll balance it out with that red sign on the left. And it's yeah, it's quite an enjoyable um summer's morning on that day, and lots of hustle and bustle. That's actually right beside me now. I'm looking at it now, the bigger version. It's going off in the post to a new home tomorrow. And
Nice.
it's yeah, it was a fun one, that one.
Yeah. So if you were teaching a workshop and you were trying to show people how to paint in the way that you paint,
Mhm.
probably the first stage is to put a bit of pencil down, not a lot,
Yeah. Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then the sort of background washes.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would do a little value study, because that teaches you how to to simplify the painting, and to look at a scene and not get overwhelmed by it. And so if you imagine a value study of this one, would basically be all that middle value of that tree on the left, and it's connected to the hills in the background, and the roof of that building on the left, and it goes across over to the roof of the building on the right. So that's all one big shape, and that would all go down in the value study as well. And the value study, it could be literally as big as your thumbnail, like a thumbnail sketch. You could just do it just to help with the composition. You'll be able to tell then as well, oh, that looks nice, but maybe that's too much of a big shape there. And maybe if I move that to the left and that's the right, so you can play around a bit with the value study before you go into the main painting. That's where the sketchbook comes in handy, that you can just do a little value study. And I really recommend that when you're starting off painting. And so that would be what I would teach on my workshops, is just to show people how to approach a value study and then integrate that into the main painting.
Okay. So we have a question from Maria. She's asking, what color do you use for the shadow? And do you have one color that's sort of your go-to shadow color, or it just depends on the situation?
I generally have two colors that I use, burnt sienna and ultramarine, and I vary them so it cools them down and warms them up. So you have your warm hue and your cool hue. And for example, that roof on the left building, there's a little bit of a, I suppose, a warmness to the left of it, and then it goes to a kind of a cool. So there was more burnt sienna in my mixture, and then there was more ultramarine. And it's the same for the roof on the right. You see there's an extra little bit of ultramarine and then a bit more burnt sienna. But it's generally those two colors, and they they're my go-to shadow colors.
Shadow colors. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. And I have another question here. I'm just gonna click ahead. Um, so Perry is asking if you can show an example of a thumbnail for a painting. Sorry, a thumbnail for a value study. Maybe afterwards, do you have something?
I I don't have my sketch pads here, but I could draw one out, or maybe I have one. Let me have a look. Do you know what? I think I do. I think I do, and I'll look for it after.
Okay.
Um, we'll figure something out.
Yeah. And so we're back to cows.
Back to cows again. I love cows. This one is um, a few fields away from the road, so there was no one around, and it was lovely. So I could just paint in absolute freedom. And again, I was drawn towards the cows, and I've used this particular sketch as a demonstration for a lot of my online Zoom demonstrations or workshops. And it's just you've got the hills in the background, and then the middle value trees, and then the cows.
Yeah.
And then you're just playing around with a little bit of dry brush and wet into wet with the foreground.
Yeah. Yeah. Sebastian, you mentioned that you grew up on a farm.
Yes, well, it was a farmhouse, and the farm wasn't being worked on, but there was a farmer that rented it, and he came and used it, and I drove a tractor for him when I was 16, and
Yeah.
I left school, and I was drawing silage around the place, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I've lots of experience and friends who are working on farms as well. So lots of time has been on farms.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I feel like painting cows or drawing cows or horses or, farm animals, if you're not around them, you first have to really take time to look at them to understand the shapes and the way they move and so on. And
Yes.
I personally would find drawing or painting cows harder than drawing or painting people just because I not that familiar with the shapes.
Yes, I hear you. I think what my general go-to is I get one cow that looks like a cow, and then the other shapes are really just like we are just put in a blob with some legs. And then again, the eye of the viewer sees that one cow and goes, oh yeah, that's a cow. So all those are obviously cows. They're just doing unusual maneuvers. They're bending down or they're looking up or they're twisting around. So it's it's the same with sheep. You get one sheep in, and then you could have like a group of them. Was it a herd of sheep? Is it? I can't remember. Anyway, and so that would be all one shape then of a group of, 6 or 7, but it's just literally a blob with a few legs. So once you get one in, then it's okay.
Yeah, and then the rest, the viewer understands. Okay, these are cows,
Exactly. Exactly.
and this
I
is the
found a good
sketch.
value study, by the way, so I can show you guys after.
Okay, so this
Oh yeah,
this
there's the
one,
sketch.
this is the same view, but it's a different sketch.
This is the sketch of the painting that you saw. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
okay,
So I went out and I painted this on the scene, and I put in all the shapes that I liked, and and then I I captured the magic there, and then I released it onto the bigger page, so to speak.
right, right, right. Okay, cool. And I think this is our last sketch. Here we go. Perfect. Did you
All
want to
right.
show that thumbnail?
Yeah. Okay, so this is a picture of a church quite near me, and I use this as an example of creating breaking it down to a value study. So, so here's the sketch. Now it's not a small sketch, but it's an idea of just using a little bit of paint spray or neutral tint to get all that one shape in. It's pretty much just all one shape, except those dark bits that went in right at the end. So I put them next to each other, and you can kind of see how I just broke down that whole scene. And I used this as the value study for the bigger painting. Now I don't have that with me. That's sold, but it's just to give you an idea of the value study. Now you can have them half the size as well. You know, sometimes I draw them in my palette, and you might just have it, you know, this size, and
Yeah,
you put in, you know, put in your rule of thirds and put in your shape, and it
cool.
simplifies it.
Well, thank you so much, Sebastian, for sharing your art and your love of Ireland and the countryside and landscape, and learned a lot about scratching out the
Yep.
paint. I'm going
Get
to
those
try to,
fingernails dirty.
yes, I'm going to try to remember to do that. I never do that. But it's a technique, right?
Yeah,
why not give it
yeah.
a try?
Give it a go.
And your dry brush was also really interesting to see. Thank you.
Excellent. My
Yeah.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks everyone for coming. Just to let you know that I'll be offering more free interviews and demos coming up this year. Gary Garetz will be talking about gouache painting on February the 5th. So you need to go to the website, www.studio56boutique.com, and get your free ticket there. Stephanie Bauer is doing a free demo on February the 7th. And Renata Lahal is doing a free demo on February 28th. Please subscribe to our newsletter and you will be updated and alerted when these free demos and interviews happen. Thank you, Sebastian, so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank
Any
you
final
for having
words
me.
for
It was
people?
very enjoyable. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
There we
Hopefully
go.
we'll see you again sometime.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day and hope to see you back soon. Bye for now.
Bye.